Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Welcome to the Business Innovators Radio Podcast. In fact, Season 2 of the Business Innovators Radio Podcast with me, your host, Rick Brown. As the show title suggests, the Business Innovators Radio Podcast is focused on highlighting influencers, innovators, and trendsetters in small business, those people we call business leaders. Note, I didn't say business owners, because leaders come from all echelons. The guests that you hear on this program are all business leaders who are passionate about educating and advocating for your success. In fact, it's a requirement to be on this show because we want to help you grow in your pursuit of becoming an authority in your own niche, regardless of what that niche is, regardless of what your position is within the organization. Leadership and innovation come from all echelons. So last season on the program, we spoke with some true innovators and authorities in the human resources space, the CEO and the COO from Virginia-based staffing agency, Lewis, Price and Associates, who have just received some extraordinary news. That firm, Lewis, Price and Associates, founded by CEO Ken Coleman, was just named to the Inc. 5000 most successful companies in America. A huge, huge accolade. This is a list of the fastest growing privately held companies in the U.S., and I think they were looking at the years between 2015 and 2018, where Lewis Price experienced a growth rate of about 81%. So phenomenal news for a team of phenomenal leaders, and a huge congratulations to Ken Coleman and his team for this nod. So when Ken was with us here on the show last season, he spoke in depth about the concept of servant leadership and the importance of maintaining a relationship with the employees that they place into other companies. So I want you to think about this for a second. We're talking about a staffing agency. And picture in your mind kind of what the staffing agencies of old looked like in your mind. The staffing agencies of old had this reputation for perhaps only hiring for temporary positions, hiring for manual labor or entry-level jobs, and not to knock any of those, because again, leadership comes from all levels, but just kind of that stereotype. You really probably didn't need much of an education for the jobs that a staffing agency placed you in the quote-unquote olden days. They were not jobs, frankly, that probably paid a whole lot, and I don't think that beyond placement, those agencies really had much else in concern for their employees. They weren't worried about maintaining that relationship with the employee in the way that Ken talked about with us, or for ensuring their personal growth, career goals, etc. So the Lewis Price model is changing that culture, and certainly that Inc. 5000 nod is a testament to that. So now, as you're listening to this, with that old kind of temp hire resume stereotype in your mind, I want to introduce today's guest. Finally, we get there. Ernest Lehmann, otherwise known as Stefo. We'll call him Stefo here today. Stefo is a senior Lewis Price team member who has certainly found his niche and become an authority in his niche by working with Lewis Price to be placed in another company. Stefo joins us today to help us better understand how the Lewis Price model is innovating the HR world, that staffing agency world, but from an individual employee perspective, as somebody who's done very well for himself in finding his niche through a staffing agency. Stefo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
You bet. I kind of wanted to I definitely want to get into your background, but I think I want to let you tell that story. Tell us a little bit about your background, education, where you have worked and where you're at today.
So I have about 20 years of experience in a public affairs, public relations capacity, with an emphasis on cross-cultural communication and supporting international organizations overseas. For example, I worked 10 years with the United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations, which is responsible for negotiating peace accords between countries that are in conflict situations. In fact, I spent 7 years living in conflict situations in Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, And I'm a graduate of the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. And I guess you're right. I guess I'm not the traditional temp agency employee. I will say that, I don't even regard Lewis Price as a staffing agency. I know they brand themselves as a staffing company, but I think that they take sort of a non-traditional approach. Lewis Price aims to, I think, change the paradigm of how clients augment their workforces. Whereas, a traditional staffing agency would find adequate workers, give them to a company for 2 days or 2 weeks, and then ensure that they get a commission for every worker they place. Lewis Price, in my experience, differs from that model in the sense that they really take the time to understand the client. They take the time to understand the culture of the client, the environment, the priorities, the objectives of the client. And they also take equal amount of time identifying staff members that have matching backgrounds. And that's the case with me. And I work at a place called the Defense Information School, which is the largest government-run academic institution that focuses on training communication professionals. And, they were looking for a professional that was able to train military public affairs officers to identify opportunities to work with international organizations during operations. They also were looking for a professional that would be able to develop a training program for military officers from allied countries. And so, my background working for the United Nations overseas, non-governmental organizations with foreign militaries really allowed me to develop the program that the Defense Department wanted. And so now the program that I developed is now being expanded to cover officers from over 60 different countries. And so when it continues to expand, so the Department of Defense is actually happy with the project that we completed. And I think that's basically a testament to the effort that Lewis Price takes in identifying professionals and matching them with the needs of their client.
So who does the individual actually work for, Lewis Price or for the end client that you're placed with?
And that's a great question. I work for the team members work for Lewis Price. They're the ones who pay us. But, it's very easy to fathom team members sometimes forgetting who their employer is because they are such an integral part of the client's operation. And my experience is also that the client relies heavily on team members. And that speaks to the close-knit integration that Lewis Price team members have with their clients. That said, it's also important to note that Lewis Price really emphasizes the team spirit of its team members and does make them feel connected to the company. Lewis Price sponsors quarterly happy hours, provides them with quarterly newsletters. And so we are clearly part of the Lewis and Price team, but we are also seamlessly integrated with the client.
Talk a little bit, if you can, about that integration. So we're talking about somebody who wants to go through a company like Lewis Price to get placed into a company. What is that integration process? What is the hiring process?
I'm not an expert at what the hiring process is because I am not a human resource expert. I know that I provided Lewis Price with my resume. They interviewed me. They took the time to understand what my background was, what my professional skills were, and they identified an opening at the Defense Information School, which in fact was a perfect match. I've been there working with Lewis Price at the Defense Information School for 3 years, and I have been able to contribute to the objectives of the Defense Information School to the point where that the client is very happy with the work that was done and wants to continue the relationship. Lewis Price hires team members with a wide variety of skills. They go from admin assistants to program managers to information technology, to professionals like myself who are equipped to advise large clients like the Department of Defense on how to maximize training and be more successful communicators. Lewis Price obviously prioritizes the needs of the client, but I think what sets Lewis Price apart is that they also, in equal measure, prioritize the needs of the team members. And even if it means smaller profit margins, Lewis Price stands out in that way because they understand that, happy, satisfied, fulfilled team members will provide better services to the client. And, I have an example of how Lewis Price is willing to sacrifice profit margins to ensure that team members are continuing to provide superior service to the clients. For example, the Defense Information School is structured in a way where there's an academic calendar that requires breaks for summer and breaks for winter. We're talking about 4, 5, 6 days where the DoD, the Defense Department, no longer needs training because there are no students. They are on break. And in the past, companies have not actually paid the staffers because they weren't providing training. The DoD did not, being good stewards of taxpayer money, which they usually are, they decided they weren't going to pay the staffing agency. Well, Lewis Price took a different approach. They understood that it was going to be disruptive to the staff member, to the team member, and they decided that they were going to reduce their profit margins to continue paying their staffers, their team members, despite them not providing the training to the client. So I think, again, it speaks to Lewis Price's commitment to maintaining a satisfied and fulfilled team of workers because they understand that those type of team members will provide a superior quality service to the client.
So kind of speaking of that money piece of it, are you really able to make a substantial income by finding work through a staffing agency? I mean, they've got to get their cut somewhere. So doesn't that mean less money for you somehow?
I think today, as in the past, your salary is a function of what you bring to the table. I know in my experience, someone with my background and my education level, I find that the salary and benefits package that Lewis Price offers are competitive. They're certainly competitive with private sector jobs, competitive with public sector jobs, and in some cases, they even exceed them. And for example, the 401k program that Lewis Price offers its team members, they offer a 4% match. If you invest 8% of your paycheck into your 401k, they will match it by 4%. So that's what I do, which means at the end of the day, I'm investing 12% of my paycheck into my retirement plan. I think that, based on my experience, that exceeds the standard 401k contribution, assuming that your company actually does contribute to your 401k. But I think the industry standard is more about 3%. And you know what? Here's another benefit that I have noticed working with Lewis Price. And that is, I graduated from, like I said, the Kennedy School of Government from Harvard. And, I have classmates that are advisors to prime ministers, they're partners in large firms, they're leaders in the nonprofit sector. So I could have other options that might be more lucrative or might be more prestigious. But Lewis Price offers me something that other people do not have. And that is a work-life balance, which is rare today. I have a family with 2 daughters. I want the flexibility to be able to go home. I want the flexibility to have a regular time schedule and to spend time with my family.
Sure.
And that is a tangible benefit that Lewis Price offers that many other staffing companies don't provide.
Yeah, sure. That makes a lot of sense. Do you have to pay the Lewis Price, the staffing agency, to get work?
No, you don't. In fact, if you're a professional, if you are someone who has passion for the work that they do, if you share the Lewis Price values of integrity and intention and are committed to helping your client achieve its objectives, if you're a problem solver, then Lewis Price will pay you. Obviously, you don't have to pay Lewis Price.
What does the supervisory chain of command, we talked about this a little bit, but the supervisory chain of command, again, you talked about you're working for Lewis Price, but you're placed into an organization like the Defense Information School where you're working with a group of team members who are not necessarily also with Lewis Price. So how does that supervisory chain of command work for you?
So at every work site, as far as I know, at Lewis Price provides a team lead. That team lead is there working as a team member for that client, but has the responsibility to ensure that all team members' needs are met, all their concerns are addressed. But Lewis Price goes beyond that, I think. It's the kind of company that you can, as a team member, call higher headquarters and have your concerns addressed by the program manager and even by the CEO. I mean, in my case, I'll give you an example. About a year and a half ago, I was questioning where my career was going. I had doubts that I wanted to continue. I wanted, maybe more challenges. And I recall the CEO, whose name is Ken Coleman, previously talking about a life coach that he had. So I wanted to talk to him to see what sort of advice the life coach might have for me. I didn't really want to spend hundreds of dollars an hour, but, I was willing to pay her. Ken Coleman, the CEO, he said, contact my life coach. Don't worry about paying her. I will take care of it. And, it really speaks to their commitment, the company's commitment to ensure that your needs are fulfilled, even if it entails an expense on their part. And so listen, here's the irony. I ended up not even contacting this life coach because I took a few steps back and I realized that, I am satisfied and fulfilled where I am. I don't actually want a career change. And so, Rick, I'll ask you a question. How many Inc. 5,000 CEOs do you know that would provide a similar sort of support for individual team members?
Right. And I think that probably speaks as to, how Ken and the team ended up there. I think by what you're talking about there, them taking an interest in their team members in the way that he has with you. And that's probably what helped you take a step back and say, oh, this is exactly where I need to be right now.
Yeah, I agree. Price is the kind of company that takes care of not just your own professional and developmental needs or requirements, but again, if you have human resource questions, if you have training needs, for example, they really emphasize the importance of training. They want their team members to be at the cutting edge of their field. So if individual team members identify a training opportunity, they can request Lewis Price to fund that training opportunity. You can get the training, the company will pay for it, with one small caveat that whoever gets trained returns to the worksite and uses that training to train their fellow team members. So everybody wins. The individual team members, the client, because they have better trained team members working for them. And again, Lewis Price understands this and they benefit because they have more satisfied clients. But it goes even further than that. Even the smaller logistical issues are addressed very promptly. And one of the things I do at the Defense Information School is I manage this international program where we train military officers from partner nations. One of my priorities is to ensure that these international officers integrate with the American officers, interact as much as possible so that we can learn, the Americans learn from the internationals and the internationals learn from the American officers. One way I do that is to organize weekly briefings where the international officers will brief Americans on the work that their military does, examples of collaboration between, say, the Tanzanian military or the Nigerian military, how they work with the United States Army or military, And so that required me to provide, food on a weekly basis. So I bought pizzas, and I know this is getting in a little bit in the weeds, but I think it really speaks to Lewis Price's responsiveness. The client, in this case, the Defense Information School, did not have the funds at that moment to sponsor these events and to buy the food. So I contacted Lewis Price and I said, hey, we need this for the client. The client needs this. It will help us to improve the training. Lewis Price said immediately, we will fund that. So just collect the receipts, buy all the pizzas you want. So I bought pizzas once a week for 5 weeks for about 30 people each week. Save the receipts, and literally at the end of this program, return the receipts to the chief of staff, a gentleman by the name of Joshua President, and literally within 24 hours, I had the reimbursement wired into my checking account. So, it's not just about, your professional needs, your personal needs, your human resource needs. It's small things such as being reimbursed for expenses that really make, I think, based on my experience, that make Lewis Price stand apart from the rest.
I was going to ask you about benefits and insurance and that kind of thing. Surely if they're paying for the pizzas, insurance is not an issue.
Well, listen, again, I think you're trying to frame Lewis Price as one of those stereotypical temp agencies. And, in my experience, it's not a stereotypical temp agency. It's more of a career development company.
I think that's an important distinction too, because I think a lot of people listening probably have that stereotype in their mind. And when we're talking about innovating and introducing innovative leaders to our audience, I think that these things that you're talking about here clearly show that a company like Lewis Price is clearly innovating in this space. So yes, totally agree with you. And I think it's important to help people understand that even as somebody who might be looking to partner with a company like Lewis Price to find work, this is not the stereotypical temp agency of old.
I think it's important to focus on the fact that, Lewis Price, they do brand themselves as a staffing company, but they really do hire you with the intention of watching you grow, facilitating your professional growth through training. It's a company that is large enough to provide interesting opportunities in a variety of fields, and also large enough to provide resources for your own personal and professional career development. But at the same time, it's also the kind of company where team members are not just sort of a number. They are not just equal to a commission that will be made by the staffing company. Lewis Price leadership knows each individual team member by name. For example, in my contract for the Defense Information School, we have about 40 Lewis Price team members. The leadership of Lewis Price, when they visit our site, and this includes the CEO, Ken Coleman, and the program manager, they know every single team member by first and last name. I don't even know this person, all the team members that are working on my contract. But, again, how many Inc. 5000 CEOs do you know who know each and every one of their staff members by their name? It really is a unique experience working with Lewis Price.
Yeah, well put. And Stefo, I think you've done an excellent job here of dispelling the stereotype that I've tried to paint in our listeners' heads with a company like Lewis Price, innovating in that HR space, trying to break that mold. And what they have done has been proven with this naming to the Inc. 5000 list. It's great to see a company like this innovating and succeeding in such a magnificent way. If you had kind of one piece of advice for folks who are looking to get involved with an HR staffing company, a professional development company like Lewis Price, what kind of advice would you give them?
Listen, if you're someone who takes pride in your field of expertise, if you're someone who is a problem solver, if you're someone who is committed to helping, large and small and medium-sized companies achieve their objectives, I think Lewis Price offers opportunities. And the great thing is that they offer opportunities in a variety of fields with a variety of business models. And so you can, as a team member, really develop as a professional, pursue a variety of opportunities, and be sure that your company has your best interest at heart. Also, they're a company that clearly has the client's best interest at heart. And I think the marriage of those two things is what sets Louis Price apart.
Excellent. You familiar with the Proust Questionnaire? Marcel Proust?
No.
Okay, he was a French writer back in the early 1900s, and he believed that in answering a list of questions, I'm only going to ask you a few because there's like 20 questions here, but he believed that in answering these questions, an individual reveals his or her true nature. So we're going to get deep into your soul and psyche. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Which living person do you most admire?
I would say, I appreciate what Barack Obama brought to our society and our culture. And I think he provided a great example, particularly for, African-American families in the United States, and a great set of priorities. I don't want to get political, but I think he exemplifies priorities that most Americans share.
Okay, good. What is the quality you most like in a person?
I don't know if I can drill it down to just one quality. I like people that are loyal, but I also like people that are self-deprecating, don't take themselves very seriously. I like people that are willing to have a good time, people that can see outside of our society's needs for having prestige, stature, and money, and understanding that those really aren't the most important values that people should have.
Yeah, nice. Which talent would you most like to have?
Does flying count?
Sure. Yeah.
It would be pretty awesome if I could fly.
Like, would you want wings, or you just like jetpack?
No, just I want to fly somewhere. I don't want to deal with traffic. Just jetpack, wings. I don't care. Just like a propulsion mechanism that is human that would allow me to fly. But so that's a quality I would like. I would like the quality, and it's something that I understand that I lack, and thank God I have a wife that brings it up to me occasionally, and that is to be more understanding of and empathetic with the tribulations that other people might be facing on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's a good one too.
Yeah.
You've been all over the world. Where would you most like to live?
That's a fantastic question. It's a question that I pose to myself very often. It really depends. Am I alone, or am I living with my family? If I'm alone, I would like to go live in Africa, because I think Africa really helps you to put your life into perspective. When I went to live in Africa, I realized how lucky I am as an individual, as an American, living in a society where, I used to complain when I was living in New York City that, the store didn't have the right fitting pair of pants. My big problem. I went to Africa and I realized, I'd see these little kids with these beautiful smiles on their faces. And I lived in countries where there were wars, and these kids didn't have anything. They had misery, hunger, but yet they had these beautiful, innocent, genuine smiles. I was like, my goodness gracious, I really have to understand what is important in life. And so Africa really did that for me, and I enjoy that. In fact, I do actually want to bring my family to live in Africa. That would be a preference. But long term, my favorite country, I would say, is Spain. Like if I were to retire, it would probably be Spain. I like Spain. I like the history, the culture. I like their attitude about not taking things too seriously. The food, cost of living there is pretty good too. So Spain would really be like top of my list in terms of retirement. Africa would be my preference if I were to live by myself, but also with my family on a short-term basis. Yeah.
Yeah, those are two really cool answers. Do you have a favorite author, or maybe an author you're reading right now, a favorite book you're reading right now?
So I love Malcolm Gladwell. lots of his books. Outliers, a fantastic book. As a kid, I used to love Robert Ludlum because I was really into, spy novels and adventure. But now, David McCullough, who is a great historian. He wrote many books, my favorite being 1776, about our revolutionary, the year. Actually, it's a book entirely about that year and about our battles with the British to become independent.
Very cool. And maybe this is the last and perhaps the most important question to stare deep into your soul. Who is your favorite superhero?
I have to say, I grew up in Italy, man. They don't have the Flash and Spider-Man and Batman, and so I never really grew up reading superhero comic books. And so I'm not. It'd be so trite to say Superman, but I don't know. I used to like the guy named Zorro when I was a kid.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Do you have Zorro here?
That's cool. Yeah.
Is he a superhero?
Yeah, why not? Absolutely. All right, cool. That's it. Stefo Lehmann, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for helping our listeners understand the roadmap to working with a company like Lewis Price and getting into a position, finding your niche, finding your place of authority. We appreciate your time here. Do you have a website you can share with us?
Yeah. So I think that if anyone is interested in applying to positions that are being offered by Lewis Price, they should have a resume and submit it via the website, which is lewisprice.com. They should feel absolutely confident that if they have a passion for a job, if they have problem-solving skills, then Lewis Price will be committed to helping you grow, helping you pursue your interests, and paying you a absolutely competitive salary.
Great. Stefo Lehmann from Virginia-based staffing agency Lewis Price and Associates. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Business Innovators Radio Podcast. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. I'm your host, Rick Brown. And until next time, keep innovating.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.